Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It was the 12th of November, 2017. The rain had been pouring all day in the small town of Hemlock Springs, a place I didn't expect to end up in. I wasn't supposed to be here, but I had no choice. My car broke down miles away from any real town, and after hours of waiting, I saw a dim light in the distance. A gas station, sitting alone on the side of the road like a forgotten relic of the past. It was strange. There weren't any other cars, not a soul in sight. Just that flickering neon sign casting a sickly green glow on the rain-soaked road. Should have turned around, driven back. But at that point, I was desperate. I'd been on the road for too long, and I needed fuel both for the car and for myself. I made the turn and pulled up to the station. The place looked old, but not abandoned. It was as if it had been stuck in time, existing, but not quite alive. I could feel the weight of the silence around me, thick and heavy. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not alone, even when you are. I tried shaking off the feeling as I grabbed my jacket and headed inside. The door creaked when I pushed it open, and a small bell chimed above my head. Inside there was no warmth, no friendly greeting, just dim light and the musty smell of old wood and gasoline. Behind the counter stood a man. He was older, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. He didn't smile, didn't say anything, just nodded as I walked in. I felt an odd shiver run down my spine, but I told myself it was just the cold. I approached the counter, trying to act casual. "Hey, got any idea when the rain will let up?" I asked, trying to break the silence. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted past me for a moment, almost like he wasn't seeing me at all. Then, in a low voice, he finally spoke. "It's been raining like this for years, you get used to it." I wasn't sure what to make of that. The rain had been pouring non-stop, but it didn't feel like he was just talking about the weather. There was something in his tone, something off. I glanced around, looking for something to take my mind off the strange atmosphere. I saw a few dusty bottles of soda on the shelves, a sign for snacks, and some old faded posters on the wall. Nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. I paid for the fuel and turned to leave, but something made me hesitate. I glanced back at the attendant. There was a faint flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe it was the lighting, but it looked like he was trying to say something without using words. Maybe I was just overthinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I thought about leaving, but the storm outside was only getting worse, so I did what anyone would do. I stayed. I stood there for a moment, my hand resting on the door, eyes darting around the small shop. The air felt thicker now, almost suffocating. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to ignore the feeling that something was watching me. The old man behind the counter seemed to sense my discomfort, his eyes never leaving me, though his face remained expressionless. "Couldn't have picked a worse night to get stuck," I muttered, half to myself. The man's eyes flickered for a moment, almost like he was considering a response. But then, he just nodded again, as if my words meant nothing. I turned back toward the door, and as I stepped outside, a sudden gust of wind hit me like a wall. The rain had picked up again, hammering the ground harder than before. The headlights of my car flickered, casting strange shadows on the gas pumps. I quickly locked the door and started filling up the tank, the sound of the pump clicking every few seconds breaking the silence. Then just as I was finishing, I heard it. A faint noise, footsteps maybe. Slow, deliberate steps from behind me. I froze, the nozzle still in my hand. The gas pump stopped mid-sentence. I turned my head slightly, half expecting to see the attendant behind me, but there was no one there. Just the empty lot, the old station, and the darkness stretching on forever. I shook it off. I had to. It was just my imagination, right? the storm messing with my head. But as I finished fueling up, I caught sight of something else, something that made my heart race. A figure. Standing by one of the old pumps, its shape barely visible in the dim light. The figure wasn't moving, but I could feel its presence, like it was waiting for me. I squinted, trying to make out more details, but the rain and fog made it almost impossible. I quickly got back into my car, locking the door behind me. The engine roared to life, but the figure was still there, now just a shadow in my rear view. Mirror. I didn't want to look, but something pulled me back. Something told me that if I didn't look, I wouldn't be able to leave. I glanced over my shoulder, but when I turned, the figure was gone. Just like that. Vanished into the mist. I took a deep breath, telling myself that it was probably someone else stranded in the storm. Nothing to worry about. Still, a cold feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew I needed to leave. I didn't belong here, but as I started to drive off, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Something that didn't want me to leave. I turned the corner, and the gas station was gone. Just like that. It was as if it never existed, swallowed by the storm and the night. But I knew what I saw, and I knew what I felt. I just didn't know how to explain it. I drove faster, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. The rain continued to pour, blurring everything around me. It was almost as if the world had shrunk down, the road stretching on forever with no end in sight. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. What was that figure? Where had the gas station gone? It didn't make sense. I glanced at the dashboard. Everything was normal. The lights on the car were working fine. My fuel gauge showed I had enough to get me somewhere else. But something was still gnawing at the back of my mind. Something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling that the station wasn't just gone. It felt like I had been pulled into something unnatural. I had to stop. I needed to clear my head. Ahead, I saw the faint outline of another building. A small diner, tucked away just off the side of the road. It looked like the kind of place that hadn't changed in years. I turned in without thinking, my car pulling into the lot as if it was an instinct. The bell above the door rang as I entered, and the warm light of the diner hit me like a blanket. It was a relief, really. The air was warm, the smell of coffee, and grease filling my senses. But there was something about the place that still felt wrong. The diner was empty, aside from a waitress who stood behind the counter. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with a tired face and dark circles under her eyes. She didn't greet me, just gave me a quick glance before returning to the work she was doing. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice flat, like she had asked the question 1,000 times without caring about the answer. "Yeah, sure," I replied, sliding into one of the booths. I looked around the diner, trying to shake off the feeling that I was being watched. The walls were covered in old photographs, the kind you'd find in any roadside diner, black and white snapshots of families, trucks, and landmarks. But something in the images unsettled me. A man in one of the photos stood with a grin that looked almost too wide, his eyes hollow and empty. I quickly turned my gaze away, trying not to let it consume me. The waitress brought the coffee over. She didn't say a word, just placed the mug in front of me and walked back behind the counter. I took a sip, trying to calm my nerves, but the taste was strange. It was bitter, but not in the usual way. Something about it didn't sit right. I pulled the mug away from my lips and stared at the dark liquid, feeling the weight of the silence in the diner. I couldn't stay here forever. I needed to get back on the road. But as I stood to leave, something caught my eye. Outside, through the rain-soaked windows, I saw a figure standing by the side of the diner, just like before. A shadow in the distance. I froze. It was the same figure from the gas station. This time, there was no mistaking it. The outline was unmistakable, the shape familiar. But it wasn't the same figure anymore. It was closer. Much closer. I hadn't heard any footsteps, no movement at all, but there it was standing just outside, staring in through the glass. The waitress didn't seem to notice. She was cleaning a cup, lost in her own world. I quickly turned away, trying not to panic. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. I knew I needed to leave, but my legs felt like lead. The figure didn't move. It just watched. I grabbed my jacket, pushed open the door, and stepped out into the pouring rain again, my heart racing. I didn't look back. Not once. I got into the car, locked the door, and started the engine. But even as I drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The shadow of the figure was still there, somewhere, watching. And I knew, deep down, that whatever was out there, I hadn't seen the last of it. The rain didn't let up. In fact, it was worse now, the windshield wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The road ahead was a blur, the headlights casting weak beams of light that barely penetrated the darkness. I kept my eyes fixed on the asphalt, not daring to look in the rearview mirror, though the sensation of being followed never stopped gnawing at me. I drove for what felt like hours, the endless stretch of highway wrapping around me like a tunnel. The car's tires hummed on the wet road, the sound almost comforting. It was quiet now, the only noise being the rhythmic swish of the wipers. But then, out of nowhere, the engine sputtered. A jolt ran through the car. I felt it immediately. My stomach dropped. The engine cut out. I tried to restart it, but the car was dead. Not even a click. Just a deep, unsettling silence that settled over me. I cursed under my breath. Of course this would happen. My phone had no signal, and there wasn't another car in sight. I was stuck. The only option left was to get out and check the engine, though I had no idea what I was looking for. I pulled my jacket tightly around me, stepped out into the pouring rain, and walked around the car. The road around me was swallowed by mist, the darkness so thick I couldn't see much beyond a few feet. That's when I heard it, a faint sound in the distance. A whistle, low and almost melodic. I froze. It was coming from the woods, just off the road. The kind of sound you hear when someone is trying to get your attention, deliberate, soft, but clear. The whistle repeated, like a slow, rhythmic call. Turned toward the sound, but I couldn't see anyone. I called out, my voice cutting through the rain. Hello? Is anyone out there? No answer. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in the car, to lock the doors and drive away as fast as possible. But something kept me rooted to the spot. Something was pulling me toward the woods, toward that eerie whistle. I don't know why I followed it, but I did. Each step felt like it took me deeper into another world. The air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in around me, the trees towering high above, their branches swaying in the wind. I pushed through the underbrush, my boots slipping on the wet ground, until I came to a small clearing. There, standing in the middle of the clearing, was the figure. It was the same shape, the same shadowy outline, but this time, it wasn't still. The figure was moving slowly, its body swaying, as if it was beckoning me to come closer. Its silhouette was blurred, shifting in and out of focus, like it wasn't quite part of the world around it. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer, unable to stop myself. I don't know why I didn't turn around and run. Maybe I was too terrified to move, too hypnotized by the figure's presence. It raised one arm slowly in an almost unnatural motion, as though it was reaching for me. And that's when I realized there was no face, just darkness, a void where a face should be. No eyes, no mouth, just an empty mask of shadow. Took a step toward me. Then another. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound of my own footsteps mixed with the whisper of the wind, but I didn't dare look back. I stumbled through the trees, the wet leaves slipping under my feet, my breath ragged. In the cold night air, I didn't stop running until I reached the road again, gasping for air, every muscle in my body screaming. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care if my car was still broken down or if I was stranded. I just needed to get away from that thing. But as I reached the road, something strange happened. The mist, the rain, the darkness, it all seemed to shift like the world around me was warping. The road ahead didn't look like the one I had been driving on. It was different. It was older. The streetlights were gone, and in their place, there were only faint, dim lanterns casting long shadows. And at the far end of the road, the gas station appeared once again. The same one from before, the one I had driven away from hours ago. But this time, there were people standing outside. Their faces were blurred, just like the figure in the woods. My body froze. The gas station wasn't just a place on the side of the road anymore. It was a part of me, and I was trapped inside it. I stood frozen, unable to move. My eyes were fixed on the gas station that had no right to be there. It was impossible. It shouldn't exist. But there it was, standing like a beacon in the middle of the mist, its lights flickering, casting an eerie glow across the wet pavement. My heart raced in my chest as I tried to convince myself this was just a hallucination, some trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion, fear, and the strange events of the night. But I couldn't deny it. Took a hesitant step toward the station. The figures standing outside seemed to shift in the dim light, like shadows that weren't quite human, their shapes distorted in unnatural ways. I tried to focus, but the more I looked, the less real they seemed. Their faces were blurry, as if I was seeing them through thick glass. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. I couldn't tear my eyes away from them, even though every instinct in my body screamed for me to turn around and run in the opposite direction. But I had to know. I had to find out if it was real, if it was the same place from before. I walked closer, my feet dragging through the muck, each step heavier than the last. As I neared the gas pumps, I saw the old attendant again, the man I had seen earlier, standing by the counter like nothing had changed. His expression was blank, unseeing, like he didn't even recognize me. He nodded slowly as I approached. "Back again, huh?" he said, his voice low and calm. But there was something in it, something off. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I turned to face the figures outside. They were still there, staring, watching. "Who are they?" I asked, barely above a whisper. The attendant didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his dark eyes narrowing ever so slightly, as if he was deciding whether or not to speak. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke again. "They never leave. They never can." The words hit me like a blow to the stomach. I didn't understand what he meant, but the way he said it, it was as though he was warning me, as though he knew something I didn't. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from behind me. The sound was sharp, like the cracking of wood, followed by a shuffling noise. I spun around, heart in my throat. The figures outside were closer now. Much closer, and they were moving. One of them stepped forward, its shape becoming more distinct. A man, or at least it looked like one. His features were still blurred, but there was something about him that felt familiar. His eyes were dark, hollowed out, like deep black holes where any humanity had long since faded. He reached out toward me, his fingers elongating, stretching unnaturally. I stumbled back, my body shaking with fear, my mind screaming at me to run, to escape. But before I could move, the attendant's voice cut through the air, smooth and cold. "You'll never leave this place. No one ever does." The words echoed in my ears as I realized, with growing terror, that I wasn't just trapped in the station. I was trapped in time. The same place, the same figures, the same feeling. It was all part of a cycle, a loop. And I had just walked straight into it. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. I ran back toward the road, but it was as if the ground itself was shifting beneath me. The mist thickened and the road twisted, pulling me back toward the station, toward the figures, toward the attendant. And then, through the haze, I saw something. A shadow darting in and out of the mist, a flash of movement. It was a woman, a real woman. She was running toward me, her figure clear against the fog. "Get away," she shouted, her voice desperate. "You don't understand. You can't stay here." Before I could respond, she was gone, swallowed by the mist as quickly as she appeared. The wind howled around me, and the air grew colder. The mist closed in, the figures now surrounding me, their whispers rising like a chorus. "It's too late. You belong to us now." I turned, but the attendant was there, standing too close, his face inches from mine, his eyes deep pools of darkness. His mouth opened, and I heard a sound that wasn't words, just a low, guttural noise that made my blood freeze. And then, as quickly as it had all started, everything went silent. The mist lifted, the figures disappeared, and the gas station faded into the night. I was alone again, standing in the middle of an empty, desolate road. But I knew that what I had experienced wasn't over. I was still inside that loop, trapped between this world and the next. I just had to find a way out. I stood there in the dead silence, the road stretching out in front of me like a black ribbon in the night. The wind had stopped, leaving only the echo of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The cold air bit at my skin, but it wasn't the chill that made me feel like I was suffocating. It was the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't sure if it was real or if my mind had finally snapped, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was watching me, waiting. I took a few hesitant steps forward, my feet heavy on the wet ground. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see the gas station reappear, or one of those shadowy figures emerging from the mist, but there was nothing. The road was empty, the world still and quiet, as if it had been frozen in time. I kept walking. Faster now, my body craving movement, anything to shake off the feeling of being trapped in a dream I couldn't escape. The further I went, the more the surroundings began to shift. The trees on either side of the road began to blur, their shapes warping in unnatural ways. The ground beneath my feet felt soft, like I was walking through wet sand instead of solid earth. And then, as I rounded a bend, I saw it. A light dot it was. Faint at first, just a soft glow in the distance. But as I walked closer, it grew brighter. My eyes locked onto it, a beacon in the blackness, and without thinking, I moved toward it. It was a house, a small rundown cabin that seemed out of place in the middle of nowhere. Its windows were dark, but a single light burned dimly inside, casting a thin shadow against the walls. The door was slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. As if inviting me in, I approached cautiously, every step heavier than the last. The air around the cabin was thick with the smell of decay, of something long abandoned. My hand hovered near the door, but I hesitated. What if this was another trap? What if stepping inside only pulled me further into whatever nightmare I had wandered into? But I couldn't stay out here alone in the dark. Not after what had happened. At the gas station, I had to find answers. I pushed the door open, wincing as it groaned in protest. The inside was dark and musty, the air stale, but there was something off about the place. It felt wrong, like it had been untouched for years, yet somehow still alive with an eerie energy. I stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind me with a final deafening thud. I jumped, heart racing again. But then I heard it, a voice, soft, almost inaudible, coming from somewhere deep in the house. "Help me." I froze. The voice sounded weak, desperate. It wasn't anyone I knew, but it was human, I was sure of it. Someone was in here with me. I took a step forward, my breath shallow, my pulse quickening. The voice came again, this time louder. "Help me, please, I moved toward the sound, following it through the darkness. As I passed through a narrow hallway, I glanced around. The walls were covered in strange symbols, scrawled hastily in red. I didn't know what they meant, but I could feel their presence in my chest, a tightness that made it hard to breathe. It felt like they were watching me. The voice led me to a room at the back of the house. The door was cracked open, and as I reached out to push it fully open, I noticed something strange. The air inside was colder, thicker, like it had been locked. Away from the rest of the house for years, I stepped inside. The room was empty, except for a single chair in the center. But it wasn't just any chair. It was old, worn, with straps on the arms and legs, as if it had been used for something. Terrible. The floor beneath it was stained with something dark blood, I realized, my stomach turning. And then I saw her. She was sitting in the chair, her back straight, her hands bound tightly to the armrests. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and empty, but there was a flicker of recognition in them when she looked at me. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I took a step closer, my heart pounding louder now. The fear, the desperation in her eyes was enough to drive me mad. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. What happened to you? Her lips moved again, but this time a sound came out, a whisper. Trust. Him. I stepped back, the blood draining from my face. My mind was reeling. What was she talking about? Who was she warning me about? I turned to the door, but as soon as I did, it slammed shut behind me, locking me inside. I whipped around, only to see the figure standing in the doorway. The same dark figure I had seen before. It was him. The attendant from the gas station. But now he wasn't. Just standing there. He was smiling. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A smile that twisted his face into something unrecognizable. You shouldn't have come here, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The lights flickered, and suddenly, the room was no longer just a room. The walls began to close in, the floor. Beneath me shaking, the symbols on the walls now glowing, pulsing with a dark energy, and I realized with a sinking feeling there was no escape. The air grew thick with a sense of inevitability. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a place that had no real beginning or end. The walls seemed to pulse with the symbols, glowing brighter with each breath I took. Each step I moved further. Into the room. The attendant's figure stood in the doorway, blocking any possible escape, his smile now a grotesque, unsettling thing. It wasn't just a smile, it was a mask of something far darker, something that knew more than it should. I took a step back, my body frozen, but my mind was working a mile a minute. I needed to think. I needed to get out, but it felt hopeless. Every part of me screamed to run, but where could I go? The house had swallowed me whole, the walls now closing in on me, the room becoming smaller with every passing second. The dark figure moved, taking one slow step toward me, his shoes making no sound on the wooden floor. I wanted to speak, but my mouth was dry, my throat tight. The only thing that came out was a weak whisper. Why? Why are you doing this? The attendant tilted his head, as if he was amused by my question. You really don't understand, do you? His voice was soft, almost pleasant, but it sent a chill down my spine. You're here because you belong here. You're part of the pattern, part of the game. He stepped closer. Everyone who comes here eventually understands. But by then, it's too late. I could feel the weight of his words, heavy and suffocating. The atmosphere in the room shifted again. It felt wrong, like the very air was changing its substance, becoming something else entirely. I backed up toward the chair, the one where the woman had sat, my mind desperately trying to piece things together. Who are you? What is this place? I demanded, my voice shaking but gaining a bit of strength. What do you want from me? The figure smiled again, his eyes gleaming with that strange, unreadable knowing. It's not what I want, he replied calmly. It's what you need. This is your fate now. I could feel a cold sweat breaking out across my back. I knew this wasn't just some sick joke. This wasn't a game. The way he spoke, the way the house seemed to breathe, it was all part of something ancient, something far beyond my comprehension. I turned to look at the woman in the chair again. She hadn't moved, her face pale and lifeless, her eyes still wide with that desperate fear. But this time, something was different. Her lips parted, just slightly, and she whispered again, barely audible. "You have to break the loop. The words hit me like a jolt of electricity. Break the loop? Was this what all of this was about? Was I supposed to escape this endless cycle? The figure noticed my shift in focus, his eyes narrowing as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. "You can't break it," he said, his voice cold now, filled with an edge of finality. "No one has ever broken it. Not one person. Not ever." I didn't respond. My mind raced, my heart pounding against my chest. What if she was right? What if breaking the loop was the only way out? The attendant took another step forward, and suddenly I felt it, a force, a pull, as if the very ground beneath me was dragging me toward him. It wasn't physical, but it was more real than anything else. I felt my body being pulled in by some invisible force, my feet sliding against the floor. I fought it though. I fought with every ounce of strength I had, pushing against the invisible. Pull. I had to do something. I had to escape. I rushed to the side, reaching out toward the door, but it slammed shut before I could touch the handle. The air in the room shifted again, growing colder, the symbols on the walls now burning bright, like they were alive, watching me. "Please," I gasped, feeling my energy drain with each passing second. "Let me go. I don't belong here." But the attendant didn't seem to care. "You never did," he replied, his tone cold, distant. "None of us do. We're all stuck here. But you're not ready to understand that yet." Suddenly, there was a loud, ear-piercing crack from behind me. I turned to see the woman in the chair. Her eyes were now wide open, her mouth contorted into a silent scream. The bonds that had tied her to the chair had snapped, and she fell forward, landing with a sickening thud on the floor. I stumbled back in shock, my heart racing. I wanted to run, to escape, but I was paralyzed. Something was wrong. Something in the air had shifted, no longer just a trap for me, but a trap for her as well. The woman lifted her head, her eyes wide with panic, but now there was a terrible emptiness in them. "Help me, . She whispered once more, but this time her voice was hollow. "Please. . She raised her hand, her fingers stretched out toward me, but there was no warmth in her touch. It was as if she was no longer human, just a vessel of the house, of the force that had taken control of everything around us. Before I could move, she lunged at me, her hands grabbing my arm, her grip unnaturally strong. I screamed in horror as I felt the coldness of her touch seeping into my skin, an icy chill that made my entire body go numb. And then the room erupted into darkness. I couldn't see a thing. The darkness was so thick, so absolute, it felt like it was swallowing me whole. My breath came in sharp, desperate gasps, my heart hammering against my chest. I tried to move, but my legs were frozen, trapped in the weight of the shadow that surrounded me. The woman's grip was still on my arm, her fingers tight, cold, as if she was pulling me into the void with her. I wrenched myself free, stumbling backward, my hands reaching out into the nothingness, desperate for anything to hold on to, but there was nothing. The darkness was infinite. It pressed in on me from all sides, heavy and suffocating, and for a moment, I thought I might lose myself in it. Then a flicker. A spark of light. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, like a match struggling to catch. But it grew, expanding, casting weak shadows across the room. The figures from the gas station, they were back. They weren't in the doorway anymore, but everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, every surface was crawling with them. They're blurred. Shifting forms, twisting in and out of focus. I could feel their eyes on me. All of them, even if I couldn't see their faces clearly. They were watching, waiting, silent, as if they were a part of the darkness itself. I tried to move, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The floor beneath me was slick with something I couldn't identify, something cold and wet. That made my skin crawl. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I pushed forward, my hands outstretched, groping for something, anything solid. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance, and finally, my fingers brushed against something rough. The door was real. I yanked it open, praying for a way out, and stepped into the hallway, my heart racing. The hallway was long, stretching into an endless blackness. The walls were lined with more symbols, glowing faintly now, like some twisted constellation in the dark. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I was supposed to go. I just ran. I ran as fast as I could, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the void. Suddenly, I heard it. A laugh. It was soft at first, barely a whisper, but it grew louder, more distinct, until it felt like it was coming from all around me. It was the attendant's laugh, that same cold, empty sound I had heard earlier. "You really think you can escape?" His voice echoed, hollow and mocking. "This place doesn't let go. Not until it's ready." I pushed myself harder, my chest aching with every breath. I couldn't let him catch me. I couldn't let him drag me back into that hell. The hallway stretched on forever, no end in sight. And with each step, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, more oppressive. I turned a corner, hoping for some kind of exit, but instead, I found another door. I grabbed the handle, yanked it open, and found myself face to face with something that nearly made me lose my mind. It was the gas station, the same one. Exactly the same. The pumps were still there, the same flickering lights, the same faded sign, but now it was as if time had stopped. The figures were frozen in place, no longer shifting, no longer watching. Everything was still, silent, and then I saw the attendant, standing by the counter, his back to me. He turned slowly, his eyes locked onto mine. That smile stretched across his face again, wide and terrifying. "You thought you could leave?" he asked, his voice smooth, cold, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just been running for my life. I tried to step back, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. The gas station, the house, the figures, they were all part of the same nightmare, the same cycle that I couldn't escape. No matter how far I ran, no matter how many doors I opened, I was always pulled back. I spun around, my mind racing, desperate for some way to break free, and then I saw it, the woman. She was there, standing at the far end of the station, her eyes empty and hollow. She raised her hand again, but this time there was no pleading, no desperation, just a slow, steady movement toward me, like she was a puppet on invisible strings. And in that moment, I realized what was happening. I wasn't just a victim of the gas station, I was part of it. The loop wasn't just about the house, the figures, or the attendant. It was about me. I had walked into this nightmare, and now I was bound to it, stuck in a never-ending cycle that I couldn't escape. But I refused to give in. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to lose. Not yet. I took one final step forward. The attendant's grin widened, his eyes narrowing in recognition, but I wasn't going to be his next victim. I couldn't let him win. I turned, my heart pounding, and I ran, determined to break the cycle. Somehow, some way I would escape. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I couldn't stop. Not now. And as I ran, I heard the woman's voice. "One last time, faint but clear. You can escape. But only if you're ready to leave it all behind." The door in front of me swung open, and I stepped into the unknown. I couldn't see a thing. The darkness was so thick, so absolute, It felt like it was swallowing me whole. My breath came in sharp, desperate gasps, my heart hammering against my chest. I tried to move, but my legs were frozen, trapped in the weight of the shadow that surrounded me. The woman's grip was still on my arm, her fingers tight, cold, as if she was pulling me into the void with her. I wrenched myself free, stumbling backward, my hands reaching out into the nothingness, desperate for anything to hold on to, but there was nothing. The darkness was infinite. It pressed in on me from all sides, heavy and suffocating, and for a moment, I thought I might lose myself in it. Then, a flicker. A spark of light. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, like a match struggling to catch. But it grew, expanding, casting weak shadows across the room. The figures from the gas station, they were back. They weren't in the doorway anymore, but everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, every surface was crawling with them, their blurred, shifting forms twisting in and out of focus. I could feel their eyes on me, all of them, even if I couldn't see their faces clearly. They were watching, waiting, silent, as if they were a part of the darkness itself. I tried to move, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The floor beneath me was slick with something I couldn't identify, something cold and wet that made my skin crawl. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I pushed forward, my hands outstretched, groping for something, anything solid. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance, and finally, my fingers brushed against something rough. The door was real. I yanked it open, praying for a way out, and stepped into the hallway, my heart racing. The hallway was long, stretching into an endless blackness. The walls were lined with more symbols, glowing faintly now, like some twisted constellation but dark. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I was supposed to go. I just ran. I ran as fast as I could, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the void. Suddenly, I heard it. A laugh. It was soft at first, barely a whisper, but it grew louder, more distinct, until it felt like it was coming from all around me. It was the attendant's laugh, that same cold, empty sound I had heard earlier. "You really think you can escape?" His voice echoed, hollow and mocking. "This place doesn't let go. Not until it's ready." I pushed myself harder, my chest aching with every breath. I couldn't let him catch me. I couldn't let him drag me back into that hell. The hallway stretched on forever, no end in sight, and with each step, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, more oppressive. I turned a corner, hoping for some kind of exit, but instead, I found another door. I grabbed the handle, yanked it open, and found myself face to face with something that nearly made me lose my mind. It was the gas station. The same one. Exactly the same. The pumps were still there, the same flickering lights, the same faded sign. But now, it was as if time had stopped. The figures were frozen in place, no longer shifting, no longer watching. Everything was still, silent, and then I saw it, the attendant, standing by the counter, his back to me. He turned slowly, his eyes locked onto mine. That smile stretched across his face again, wide and terrifying. "You thought you could leave?" he asked, his voice smooth, cold, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just been running for my life. I tried to step back, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. The gas station, the house, the figures, they were all part of the same nightmare, the same cycle that I couldn't escape. No matter how far I ran, no matter how many doors I opened, I was always pulled back. I spun around, my mind racing, desperate for some way to break free. And then I saw it, the woman. She was there, standing at the far end of the station, her eyes empty and hollow. She raised her hand again, but this time, there was no pleading, no desperation. Just a slow, steady movement toward me, like she was a puppet on invisible strings. And in that moment, I realized what was happening. I wasn't just a victim of the gas station, I was part of it. The loop wasn't just about the house, the figures, or the attendant. It was about me. I had walked into this nightmare, and now I was bound to it, stuck in a never-ending cycle that I couldn't escape. But I refused to give in. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to lose. Not yet. I took one final step forward. The attendant's grin widened, his eyes narrowing in recognition, but I wasn't going to be his next victim. I couldn't let him win. I turned, my heart pounding, and I ran, determined to break the cycle. Somehow, someway, I would escape. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I couldn't stop. Not now. And as I ran, I heard the woman's voice. One last time, faint but clear. You can escape. But only if you're ready to leave it all behind. The door in front of me swung open, and I stepped into the unknown. The air around me felt unnervingly still, like the calm after a storm that still hadn't quite passed. I stood there, not moving, just taking in the silence that now enveloped me. It was different. No more dark figures watching me from the corners of my vision, no more whispers following me as I walked. For the first time, I felt alone in a way that wasn't suffocating. The sun had come out, casting a golden light over everything. The world felt normal again, like it was supposed to be. And yet, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The thought gnawed at me, a constant presence in the back of my mind. I started walking again, my steps slow at first, unsure, as if the ground beneath me might give way at any moment. But the road stretched on, and the farther I went, the more I started to believe it was real. Maybe I had truly made it out. Maybe I had won. But then I saw a dot. It was far off in the distance, but unmistakable. The gas station. The same one. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. It wasn't possible. I had escaped. I had left that place behind. But there it was, sitting at the side of the road, just like before. The flickering lights, the weathered sign. It seemed out of place, like it didn't belong in this world. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The familiar dread washed over me, colder this time, sharper. Was I stuck again? Had I fallen back into the cycle? Was there no escape? My feet moved on their own, the pull of the gas station too strong to resist. I walked toward it, drawn in by some invisible force that I couldn't understand. The closer I got, the more distorted everything seemed. The trees along the road were twisting unnaturally, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands, trying to stop me from going any farther. The sky above darkened, the warmth of the sun replaced by an eerie chill that cut right through me. I reached the gas station, the doors still open, the neon sign buzzing faintly. The attendant was standing at the counter again, just as I remembered. Him. He was watching me with that same smile, the one that had haunted my every waking moment. "You really think you've escaped, don't you?" he said, his voice colder now, darker. "You think this is over? You think you're free?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. "You're not free. None of us are. The cycle repeats. It always repeats." He continued, his grin widening, if that was even possible. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me with an almost deafening force. The darkness inside the station grew thicker, almost like it was breathing. I backed away from the counter, my pulse racing, my chest tight. The figures, those shadowy, faceless shapes, began to fill the room again, moving in and out of view, surrounding me, closing in. But this time, there was something different. A voice, faint but clear, cutting through the chaos. It was the woman. Her words echoing in my mind. "You can escape. If you're ready to leave it all behind." I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I had to try. I couldn't just let this place consume me again. I turned back to face the attendant, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. "What is this? What do you want from me?" My voice was weak, but I forced the words out, desperate for an answer. The attendant didn't reply right away. He just stared at me, his eyes narrowing as if considering something. Finally, he spoke, his voice cold and final. "You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about what I want. It's about what you need. This is your fate. It always was." The darkness in the station grew, thickening, pulling me toward it. But I refused to let it take me again. I wasn't going to fall for it this time. I closed my eyes and thought about the woman's words again. Leave it all behind. What did that mean? I tried to let go, to push everything, every fear, every memory, every doubt of my mind. I thought of the road outside, the light, the freedom that had almost been mine, and then something clicked. It wasn't the gas station, that was the trap. It wasn't the attendant or the figures or the darkness. It was me, it was my fear. I had been holding on to it, letting it control me, letting it pull me back into this endless loop. But I didn't have to. Not anymore. I let go. I released everything. The darkness started to fade, the figures disappearing one by one, their forms vanishing into nothingness. The gas station began to lose its grip on me, the weight of it lifting, until I was standing in the middle of the room, the walls now normal again, the air lighter. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the attendant was gone. I stood there for a long moment, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had I truly escaped? Was it really over? I didn't know, but I felt different, stronger somehow. And the feeling of the cycle finally breaking, of choosing to break it, made me believe that I could face whatever came next. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But I had made it out. And no matter what happened from here on out, I knew one thing for sure. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe in that. The silence stretched on, so deep it almost felt suffocating. But I didn't care. The weight had been lifted. The nightmare was behind me. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. The world outside was peaceful. The sun had finally returned, casting its warm light over the road. The trees, which had been twisting and clawing at me moments before, now seemed like ordinary trees again. The sky was a clear blue, the kind that seemed almost too perfect to be real. The air smelled fresh, and I could hear the distant hum of a car somewhere far off. Everything felt normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't completely free. There was a part of me deep down that felt like I was being watched, like the shadows were waiting for me to slip up, to fall into the trap again. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the nagging sense of unease that had settled in my chest. Maybe it was the remnants of the nightmare, or maybe it was something else entirely. I walked slowly, my feet crunching on the gravel road beneath me. The distance between me and the gas station seemed to stretch out endlessly, and I wasn't sure if I should keep moving forward or if I should turn around and run. But then, I saw something up ahead. A figure. My heart skipped a beat, my chest tightening. Not again, not after everything I'd just been through. I didn't want to face any more of this. Not now, not here. The figure was standing at the side of the road, just like before. I couldn't make out any details at first, but as I got closer, I saw it. It was the woman. The same woman from the gas station. Her face was pale, almost lifeless. Her eyes hollow, like she had been drained of everything that made her human. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at me. The same feeling of dread crept up my spine. The same darkness I had felt back at the station flooded back, suffocating me. She raised a hand, her fingers twitching, and in that instant, I felt it. That familiar pull, like the ground beneath me was starting to give way again, like the cycle was starting all over. But then, something inside me snapped. I had been through this already. I had faced the darkness, the figures, the loop, and I had survived. I wasn't going to fall into it again. I took a step forward, then another, my mind racing. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let this place take me again. I couldn't go back to that hell. I stopped in front of her, my voice trembling but determined. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my words sharp in the air. "What do you want from me?" The woman didn't respond. She only stood there, her hollow eyes watching me. But her presence was different now. It wasn't the suffocating force it had been before. It was as if she was waiting for me to make the next move. I took a deep breath. The tension was unbearable. "You've had your chance," I said, more to myself than to her. "I've broken the cycle. I'm not going back, not this time." The woman's lips twitched, but there was no smile. No expression at all. Just emptiness. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. I stood there for a moment, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. It felt wrong, like the moment wasn't real, but it didn't matter. The feeling of the cycle breaking, the feeling of taking control, it was still there, I knew. Then, deep in my bones, that this wasn't over. Not completely. There would always be a part of me, a small, lingering shadow, that would wonder if it was still watching, still waiting. But for now, I was free, and maybe that was enough. I took a few more steps, my feet almost hesitant, like the ground itself might betray me if I moved too quickly. The tension still lingered in the air, thick and unnerving. My mind was a storm of thoughts, each one crashing against the other in a desperate attempt to make sense of everything that had just happened. The woman had vanished, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, watching every movement, every flicker of shadow, expecting it to come back. But nothing moved. Nothing stirred. The world around me was still. I walked for what felt like hours, my feet carrying me aimlessly down the same road. The piece of the world around me didn't feel real anymore. It was like I was trapped between two worlds, the one I had just left and the one I was still struggling to understand. But then, in the distance, I saw it again. The gas station. I stopped dead in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. It was impossible. I had walked miles. There was no way it could be back. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't gone in circles, but there it was. The station stood like a twisted mirage in the distance, its neon sign flickering, the windows dark and empty. It was like it had been waiting for me, like it knew I'd come back. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, caught in the horror of it all. This time, though, there was something different. The air was colder, the shadows deeper, and I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing against me. I didn't want to go back in. I couldn't. I had just escaped. But the pull was stronger than anything I'd ever felt. I forced my legs to move. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see it. But I couldn't stop myself. Step after step, I got closer, the noise of my heart pounding in my ears louder than the world around me. And then I was there, standing right in front of the gas station. The doors creaked open slowly, as if they had been waiting for me. The flickering light above the door buzzed once, twice, before going out entirely. It was just darkness. I stepped inside, my mind screaming at me to turn around, to run, but my body refused. The air inside felt thick, like I was breathing in the past, the remnants of something long dead, long forgotten. And in the center of it all, I saw him. The attendant. He was standing behind the counter, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. His grin was gone. His eyes were wide open, staring at me without any trace of recognition. But there was something else there. A shadow. A movement behind him, flickering at the edges of the room, like it was watching me, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I felt it again. The same cold dread that had nearly consumed me before. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. The words caught in my chest. "You shouldn't have come back," the attendant said, his voice low and hollow. He didn't smile. This time, his voice was an echo of something far worse. I wanted to leave. I wanted to turn and run, but I couldn't. My feet were glued to the floor. The door behind me slammed shut with a deafening crack, and the world around me began to shift. The walls started to bend, the shadows growing longer and deeper. Something was wrong. Something had changed. You really think you've escaped? The attendant's voice was no longer calm. It was full of malice, full of something dark and ancient. There's no escaping this place. There's never been a way out. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, freezing the blood in my veins. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel the presence behind me, the weight of it pressing down on me like a vice. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. I was surrounded by nothing but the pitch-black darkness, thick and suffocating. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of rot. The attendant's voice came again, now much closer, whispering in my ear, "You've always been part of it. And you always will be," I gasped, my chest tightening. My breath was shallow, my mind was spinning. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the darkness swallowing everything. But then, something inside me broke. It was like a switch flipped, and a burst of rage surged through me. No, I wasn't going to let it consume me again. I wasn't going to let it take me back into the hell of that station. I couldn't let fear control me anymore. I pushed against the darkness, willing myself to move. My hand shot out, feeling for the door, the walls, anything to ground me. I didn't care how, I didn't care where. I had to escape. The darkness pressed harder, but I kept moving. I kept pushing. With every step, I felt the grip of the nightmare loosen, just a little bit more. I was getting closer. I could feel it. The door and then I heard a sound, a low, guttural growl. Something was behind me. Something was closing in, faster than I could react. I didn't look back. I couldn't, but I didn't need to. I felt it, its presence, its hunger, its need to drag me down. I reached for the door, my hand trembling as I grabbed the handle, and with one final desperate pull, I tore it open. Light flooded the room, blinding me for a moment. The world outside was normal again, the air crisp, the road stretching out ahead. I stumbled out into the light, the door slamming shut behind me. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't need to. I had escaped. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The peacefulness of it was almost too much to bear. It was as if the world had returned to its natural rhythm, like the chaos I had just been through was never real. But I knew better. I knew it was still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to pull me back. I kept walking, my feet moving steadily down the road. I didn't know where I was going, but that didn't matter. The important thing was that I was away from the gas station, away from whatever dark force had tried to claim me. The further I walked, the more I began to believe that I might have truly escaped, that maybe this nightmare was over for good. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Not physically, but in some intangible way. It was like I was being watched, like the very earth beneath my feet was aware of my every step. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, telling myself that I was free, that I had survived, but then I heard it. A distant sound, faint but unmistakable. The hum of an engine. I stopped and turned around, squinting into the distance. A car was approaching, its headlights cutting through the twilight. I felt my pulse quicken. I hadn't seen another car on this road for hours. The chance of a random car passing by seemed too convenient. As it drew closer, I could see it clearly. The same car from before. The one I had seen at the gas station. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. There was no mistaking it. The car was coming toward me, moving slowly, like it had all the time in the world. It stopped right in front of me. The window rolled down, and there he was, the attendant. He smiled, that same wide, knowing smile. "You can't run forever," he sighed, his voice smooth and chilling. "You think you've escaped, but you haven't. You're still part of the cycle. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The fear that had paralyzed me in the gas station gripped me again, holding me in place. You're never really free, he continued, his eyes gleaming with a sickening sort of satisfaction. This is just the beginning. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. The car's engine revved, the tires screeching as it sped off, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there for a long moment, too stunned to move. Had that really just happened? Was he really gone? It didn't matter. I had to keep moving. I had to get out of here. I began walking again, my legs numb from the adrenaline. The road stretched out before me, endless and empty. There was no sign of the car anymore, no sign of anything that could tie me back to that damned station. But then, I saw something in the distance, a shadow that wasn't there before. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but as I got closer, I could make out the details that it was a figure. A man standing motionless in the middle of the road. His clothes were ragged, his body thin and gaunt, like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. He didn't move. He didn't blink. I approached cautiously, my instincts telling me to turn around and run, but there was something about him that kept me rooted in place. Are you lost? I asked, my voice shaky that the man didn't answer. He didn't even acknowledge me. I took a step closer, feeling the tension in the air grow thicker with each passing second. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt that old familiar sensation creeping back, the feeling of being watched, of being trapped. The man suddenly jerked his head toward me, his eyes wide and unblinking. He stared at me, his gaze hollow, as if he could see through me. And then, he spoke. You're not free, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You never were. Before I could respond, he disappeared into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. I stood there for a moment, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't know what to make of it. Was that real? Or was it just another figment of my imagination? A product of the fear and madness that had consumed me. I didn't have time to think about it. I had to keep moving. The road seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. The trees on either side of me were now nothing more than dark, looming figures, their branches reaching out like claws. The wind had picked up, howling through the night, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. I turned a corner and saw a house in the distance. It was old, decrepit, and abandoned. But it was a place where I could rest, a place that might offer me some semblance of safety. I approached cautiously, my senses on high alert. The house loomed ahead like some forgotten relic, its windows dark, its door hanging ajar as if inviting me inside. I stepped through the threshold, the door creaking on its hinges as I pushed it open. The inside was dark, dust-covered, and silent, but there was something inside. I could feel it. I stepped further in, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The air was cold, and the silence was oppressive. As I walked through the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. I turned a corner and froze. There, standing at the end of the hallway, was the woman. The same woman I had seen before. Her hollow eyes stared at me, empty and dark, her body unnaturally still. You're too late, she whispered, her voice soft but full of malice. The cycle never ends. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Before I could react, the walls around me seemed to close in. The house began to shake, the air thick with an unnatural pressure. I had to escape. I had to leave. I turned and ran. The house collapsed behind me as I ran, the walls crumbling, the roof caving in. I didn't stop to look back. My legs moved faster than I thought possible, fueled by sheer panic. I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, following me, urging me to stop. But I didn't. I couldn't. I reached the road again. the endless stretch of it stretching before me. The gas station was gone, the attendant nowhere to be seen. I had no idea where I was or how far I had traveled, but the only thing I could focus on was escaping. I looked ahead, the path in front of me still uncertain, but it didn't matter. I had broken the cycle once. I could do it again. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I would never let it take me again. Never again. And with that, I took the first step into whatever was next. The road ahead was mine. The darkness couldn't follow. It was over. Or was it?